Welcome to the Noizze Podcast Network, sponsored by the Satanic Tea Company, brought to you as part of the Noizze Podcast Network. My name is Will, and what you're about to hear is episode 3 of our Noizze Albums of the Year podcast series, where we chat to a load of our favourite bands, and we do what it says on the tin, ask about their favourite record, chat a bit about bands they reckon people should be checking out next year, and last but certainly not least, we ask about their plans for the future and see what they're up to. In this episode, I am joined by the drummer from British metal sensations Conjurer. I don't need to say much more about how, my opinion on them. I'm sure if you've seen my Twitter whenever they release anything, they're one of my favorite bands. I think they're absolutely brilliant. I'm also speaking to the really interesting trio, or two of the trio, of Exploring Birdsong. Really interesting, piano-driven, quite progressive. Definitely check those guys out. And again, I'm also joined by Katie from Math Metal Sensations, Pupil Slicer, who've just released their second record, Blossom, earlier this year, and completed a tour with Employed to Serve as well as main support. So it's a really exciting episode. Please do give us a follow on Twitter at Noizze Podcast and Instagram at Noizze Podcast Network. Main site, you can find Noizze on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Noizze UK. Drop us a like, subscribe on YouTube. Be sure to listen wherever you get your podcasts, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever's your favorite. And if you do fancy checking out our Spotify Essentials playlist, want to buy some merch, got links in the bio. If you're feeling as extra kind, please do drop us a review on your platform of choice, because it gives us a big boost and it helps more than you think. Enjoy the episode. So this evening, I'm joined by the lovely Noah See from Conjurer. So how are you doing, first of all?
Yeah, good. Well, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, how are you doing? All good?
Yes, yeah, it's all good here. It's getting nice and cold. Still not putting the heating on because we've got to get a bet with the housemates.
Oh, is it? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying,
First one to put the heating on puts an extra tenner on the utility next month.
Oh God, yeah. Best holding off then for that one. But yeah, it's crazy how it's just kind of dropped. Everyone
Yeah,
was full summer mode until about 2 weeks ago, I think, and then it's
and then all
snuck
of a
up on
sudden,
everyone.
yeah, we were all going, "Oh, it's October. Why is it so warm?" It's not anymore.
No.
Um, but with the drop in temperature comes people dropping their albums of the year lists. Terrible segue. But it is the end of the year, and it is when the music industry all sort of starts. We sort of start talking about, what's come out over the year. And the big question is, and my first question, part of the reason we're doing this, your favorite album of 2023.
Yeah, this was a hard one because what's funny is I was not to go into super long stories that just off the back of this, but yeah, I was kind of checking out a lot of metal albums or a lot of albums that came out this year, and I think um, so we've kind of been so busy just touring and playing shows and stuff. I think a lot of them were like, "Oh, I should check that out. I should check that out," but never really got down to doing so. I thank you for this podcast as being a little kind of reminder to jump into a lot of particular albums. But there's two albums in particular that kind of really jumped out at me. One's kind of a rock metal album, one's not metal at all. The first of which being the latest Baroness album,
Oh yeah,
Stone, which kind of a late addition to the albums of the year list, but as I'm sure a lot of people might guess who know us as well, like I think any time a Baroness album drops, it's a big celebration in the Conjurer camp. But yeah, that one in particular, I've just been spinning it non-stop. Um, and yeah, they're just obviously they're such a big influence on the band as well. But I think it's such a great record, and haven't really stopped spinning it since it came out, which
yeah.
was, I guess it wasn't too long ago, probably.
No, it was.
uh
I feel like it was a September release, right?
yeah,
September,
yeah,
October.
a little bit later on.
Yeah, I also really love it. Again, a Baroness fan. Probably a little later to the party than some. Like, it was the Purple album that first got me into them,
Yeah.
which I absolutely adore and still regularly listen to. But I think one of my favorite things about Stone, not only was it them going, "Hey, we're kind of done with the whole color wheel thing,"
Mm.
but it was them really just just broadening their sound all over again. And
Yeah,
the whole story about them essentially holding up in a cabin, in like renting a house together and doing it as the studio. You can really feel that kind of like slightly ramshackle, like really DIY approach to it. Um, and it shines. I think it really shines for that.
yeah, absolutely. I think there's it feels like a much more of a step in a new direction, especially with like the lineup and things like that. I think obviously because I got into the band on Yellow and Green on that kind of cycle. So that was always my idea of what Baroness was, which is kind of an interesting one because it's very proggy, kind of stripped back. Well, not stripped back, but very mellow kind of version of the band, dynamically. But yeah, I think obviously they've had kind of the lineup they've got now for a couple of albums now, but this feels like the first one where it's super. There's a lot of Gina's influence on there as well, whether it's just as a performer, but it feels like there's a lot of that in the writing as well. Whereas I think Purple and Golden Grey still obviously had a lot of other influence on it, but I think it still felt like we're carrying on that color wheel kind of vibe, but with this new group of people. Whereas this feels like cool, it's this lineup, it's a new thing, it's a new kind of vibe.
Mm.
But as well, I think talk about this with some of the guys in the band, but whether you agree it's a great album or not one of their best or one of their best or whatever, which I think personally is quite a good kind of stock for a band. If it gets people talking and everyone's got a preference, then that
Yeah.
means that they've obviously done something right at some point for that particular person. And the fact that their sound covers so much of a spectrum that everyone has a favorite bit or a favorite part. It's not like an obvious, this was them doing their thing at the best point in their career. Like there's no question about it, because that's kind of obviously great because you get that one great album, but um, everyone's got their own kind of, I feel with Baroness, everyone's got their own preference. But as well, there's always at least, I don't know, maybe two, three, four songs on every Baroness album that I think is up there with the best that they've ever done, which is really cool. So you can always kind of guarantee whether you like the album as a whole or not, or you prefer the previous album, or you love it, or whatever. Which I do. I love Stone, but there's always a few songs on there where it's like that's up there with the creme de la creme of Baroness tracks, which is
Yeah.
really cool. So it's always great to at least have those as well. But yeah, as a whole, I love the album, and I think the more I listen to it, the more I'm picking out the stuff that I didn't pick up on the first listen, and even if there were favorite songs or songs that I was like, right, okay, that was really cool. I really love this song. These other songs are kind of getting a second life the more and more I listen to it, which is, I guess, what you want out of an album. You want that
Yeah.
replayability. So
Yeah. If you're still coming back to it now and going, I'm now more fond of this song for this reason, that's only ever a good thing.
absolutely.
You mentioned you had a second pick as well, which was a lot sort of, I guess, a bit maybe more removed from rock and metal.
Yeah, so that was a band called Unknown Mortal Orchestra, who are, I guess, for their New Zealand band, but it's very kind of, it's hard to describe. They take elements of, I mean, across their career, Tame Impala, they get kind of associated with a lot. Tame Impala, a big Radiohead vibe, Queens of the Stone Age, Jimi Hendrix kind of stuff in there as well. But their album, I guess it's V or Five, that they put out this year. It's just been on repeat for the whole year. Like it's kind of a great mix of, they've had albums that are a lot more kind of contemporary, a lot more marketable, kind of poppy with more singles and things like that, which is definitely prominent on this album, but also with some of the weirder kind of psychedelic kind of stuff in there as well, which is, I think it's like a really great mix of everything they've done before.
Hmm.
super kind of lo-fi production as well. So I guess maybe that goes hand in hand with the Baroness vibe of the DIY kind of aspect to it. But at the core, just like really interesting kind of I don't know how to, I wouldn't, yeah, psychedelic kind of funk rock kind of stuff.
Okay.
But yeah,
It's a
those
really
two have
interesting
kind of
one.
been.
It's not a band I'm familiar with, but it does sound like I should at least check out a couple of tracks and
Yeah,
try
for
and get a
sure.
feel for it. Okay,
Absolutely.
amazing. Yeah, I'll have to do that in at later point. So next up is obviously, speaking of, bands that maybe people aren't as familiar with, is because I mean, obviously, as doing what I do partly is shining, like trying to find new bands or like checking out new bands. Like it's, they're kind of like the lifeblood of the scene in a lot of ways, is they're the thing that keep it going. So my next question to you is a band that you think people should be paying more. What is your pick for a band that you think people should be paying more attention to? Whether that's because whether they're 3 albums in, whether they've not even done an EP, or if you think there's a band that maybe are just like on that cusp, that maybe they're starting to get that recognition, and 2024 is maybe going to be like a breakout year.
Yeah, yeah. True. There's plenty of bands. I had a couple in mind as well. I can't. I'm yeah, probably quite an undecisive person, as you've figured out already. But
I'm happy with multiple. That's always
cool,
good.
amazing. So there's good friends of mine in a band called Sunfall, who are, well, they're kind of doing. I think there's a few bands in the scene at the moment that are doing that kind of, I guess, I don't know how you'd call it, like a new metal, hardcore, slam kind of thing. But
Okay.
those guys kind of do it, I think, as best as anyone else. Well, better than most bands, I think, in the UK. I think they're gonna probably jump up. I think tomorrow they're releasing a song tomorrow with a collab song with 1056, which,
Okay.
having heard that already, it's heavy as fuck. So it's that kind of vibe. If you just want something that's super fucking heavy and it's going to blow your socks off, then they're definitely a band to check out. Um, in terms of, yeah, I mean, a band that I think not necessarily everyone should check out, but a band that everyone probably will definitely hear next year is a band called Unpeople, who is Luke and Jake, who are the two kind of, I don't want to say surviving members because the whole band disbanded,
Mm.
but two members of Prestamico. They got their new band, Unpeople, and we were lucky enough to have them out for a few shows across September on a headline tour. And yeah, it's pretty much, I don't want to say it's Prestamico Part Two because there's so many more elements involved in there, but it's like Prestamico with a vengeance. It's super. Just lots of conviction, and it's everything you love about Prestamico with the hooks and the kind of energy and the I don't know, just the catchy kind of pop sensibilities that you get with that
Mm.
band, but there's still that kind of edge and super aggressive and heavy kind of element. I mean, they dropped, I don't know if you've heard it, but they dropped a single, God, I can't remember now, a week or so ago.
I think it was last
Uh,
week. Yeah.
yeah, and it was fantastic. But yeah, we did obviously, like, we did about 6 or 7 shows with them, so we got to see, um, I guess, the rest of the catalog they've got so far, and it's pretty on par. So I think they'll come out next year with our full release, hopefully, and then just take the UK by storm, and hopefully more. So yeah,
I do think
that's
they're
yeah.
a big shout, to be fair, because again, obviously having known about Prestamico and the split, so seeing Prestamico's final show at Trees this year,
Oh yeah, yeah,
which was amazing. But then like to hear that, I haven't heard the new song yet, but like everyone I've spoken to about it has just said, yeah, you can hear that there's this new like fire to the band.
yeah. It's that balance of, I think there's a thing in the kind of, maybe it's just me, but like the metal kind of thing of, everyone's trying to out heavy each other, out technical each other. Everyone's trying to be the most extreme version, because there's a I guess there's there's a kind of flag to bear with that. There's a pride in being more extreme, or being heavier, or being more progressive, or being more kind of, yeah, that kind of stuff, pushing it to the limits. But they do that, but then also have the pop sensibilities, and it's like, well, this just hits and it slaps and it's stuck in your head for days on end, and it's genius, and it's very, very cool. So that was kind of a weird one, because I obviously the question was, a band that everyone should check out, but I just feel like they're a band that everyone's gonna kind of have to check out whether they know or not.
Yeah.
So,
No, I definitely think they kind of count for it, because I think they are a band that you rightly say are going to have a good year next year.
absolutely.
So last but not least, and you kind of already alluded to it, is obviously with Conjurer, you've just been out on the road doing a little bit of shows with Unpeople. But kind of the last bit is like, we just kind of like a little bit of a recap on the year. Obviously, there was the record last year as well, which everyone still loves.
Cool.
I should hope.
I
And
hope
then
so as well, yeah.
and then it's, I guess, just like the last one is like just looking ahead. Obviously within what you can say is like, what's next? What are you kind of looking towards doing? What's coming up next?
Well, we had a pretty busy year. So we were lucky enough, we did the States earlier this year, and then we hit the UK a few times. Obviously, we did our headline stuff, like I was saying just now, with Unpeople. We did some shows with Helpless as well, supporting us, which were really sick. We did Carcass. We've done a lot of great shows, and kind of we played some shows with Gojira as well earlier in the year. That was quite an intense kind of couple months with that, and really ticked a lot of boxes for the Pathos kind of cycle. I guess that obviously last year the album came out and we did the headline tour and we did a lot of festivals and stuff, and I felt at the end of the year we had a lot that we still wanted to do, and I think we've ticked a lot of that off this year with those three in particular, with Chemist, Carcass, and Gojira. But it's just a case of, I think we'd love to go back to the States as soon as possible, and then kind of going further afield from there. We've got a few things in the works that are booked up, yet to be announced, for some more international touring.
Very nice.
Across next year, which is really, really cool, and returning to some spots that we had the privilege of having a very, I guess, what's the word? A very small, kind of concentrated experience with, that we'd like to go back and kind of expand on. But other than that, just like lots of writing. I think we want to release music a lot sooner than we did, because I think the gap between Maya and Pathos was about 4 years. So we'd like to have something out, I guess, before 4 years from Pathos, whether that's a full album or some songs or an EP or something like that. But that's kind of the main focus. But with this band, it's kind of hard work, because we want to create something unique that's not just kind of run-of-the-mill stuff. It has to be as good as those two albums as well, if not better. So it takes its time, but I think that's kind of the main thing, is getting our heads down. And
I mean, it's a high bar, right? Because people still talk about Maya as one of the best like British debuts in years, and I agree with them, to be honest. But it's got to be a lot of pressure.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, obviously Maya did so much for the band, and then Pathos, I think we feel Pathos was the first realized album, I guess, because Maya was done, as you say, it's a debut, so it's kind of, you have all your life to write your debut album, and no one's expecting anything. So I think that kind of added to the thing of it being so good, was because no one expected it to be that good from a band that no one had heard of. But I feel like Pathos, as well as being, it's the first realized album where it's like, cool, this band has an expectation and a sound and a style and all this kind of stuff. That was kind of pressure. But then I guess, for all intents and purposes, about tooting the band's horn, was I guess, reaching those expectations. As a minimum, we'd hope to, match those expectations. So it's kind of like, we know we can do it, so let's see if we can do it again,
No, absolutely.
But yeah, it's a tough one. And again, like doing lots of touring for both, as soon as you've got a choice, you tour with Maya and you go, cool, that's all the music we've got, that's how we are live. And then you start playing some songs from the second album and you think, okay, well, that one does this and this one does that. What's cool with that one and what's cool with that one? You can kind of take stock on the best of everything. As soon as you've got a comparison, you can kind of really sit down and go, what is it that makes Conjurer the best version of what it is? So yeah, that's kind of the thought process, I think.
Amazing. Okay. Well, that's everything I had. Well, thank you again very much for your time.
No worries. Thank you for having me. Appreciate that.
Wonderful. Again, so thank you very much for joining me this evening. I've got Exploring Birdsong on the line. So first of all, how are you doing? How's things?
Great, thank you. Thanks very much for having us. We're very happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for asking us on.
No, absolutely. So I mean, we'll get onto it sort of in a little bit, but like I've kind of been a fan, probably quite late to the party, but with the last sort of couple EPs and like singles that you've done, I've been really on board with and been really enjoying. So that's why I was like, you know what? Absolutely, yeah. Let's have a chat. Let's talk about like, because obviously the first thing I'm going to ask you as we get into it is like the sort of thing that kind of like you're into, that what makes you tick. And with that in mind, with the time of year that it is, what is your favorite album that's come out in 2023?
Good questions. Straight in.
Yeah.
I think so. For all of us, I mean, we're into quite varied music. I know that everyone kind of says that. It's like, oh, I'm into everything, and they don't really mean that. But to be honest, I think between the three of us, Matt included, we are into quite a range of music. So and it kind of all gets put into the melting pot of what becomes Exploring Birdsong. So I think for me, and I think, to be honest, I think if you're certainly of our generation and you're like myself, it's impossible to escape Hayley Williams' influence. It's
Absolutely.
Impossible. So
Saint Hayley.
yeah, right. And when they dropped This Is Why, the single, this year, it was I was so happy to hear that they'd really kind of just thrown caution to the wind and they were trying something that seemed like you could hear the references, you could hear what was sort of happening, and that there was a little bit of throwback to psychedelia in a way, and you can kind of tell like what's happening. But they were doing it in such a cool way. So yeah, I think Paramore has got to be there for me.
I have always loved, because I first heard them on, I think, Riot.
Yeah. What an album for all of us.
Yeah, it was foundational for me understanding and sort of getting into pop punk. Because at the time I kind of came in through the heavier end. I actually came in through like Trivium and then branched out into lighter worlds. But
Let's go.
Riot was so foundational. So when I heard this one, because After Laughter took me a while to understand. I heard it at first and went, "Oh, this isn't what I expected." And then lockdown hit and I was depressed, and it made sense.
Yeah.
But then as soon as they did This Is Why, I was like, oh, I love that they're not afraid of, like you say, showing those influences, showing the references, because they've obviously grown up on like Block Party.
Right.
Who they then took out on tour, which was really cool. I just love that they basically went, let's do post-punk, but make it Paramore.
Right.
Yeah,
totally.
Absolutely. Like, it sounds like them, and yet it's almost like they've completely like shifted genres, but it's still got that core Paramore sound. It's mad. It's great.
It's cool. There's such a huge influence on us, and in lots of ways. But I think the main sort of thing that we can try and take from their whole vibe is that they're so unapologetically them. So I think if you're gonna branch out and really try something new, what they have is so distinct. And to be honest, I don't know if this is going to cause uproar, but you know, I really think that Hayley Williams' distinctive vocal is such a core part of that, and she's really the glue of, do you know what I mean? She's still the thing that you can latch onto, and your ears just know what you're listening to straight away.
Yeah, I really don't think that's necessarily a hot take, you know?
Freezing cold, probably.
Yeah, because she really is like a powerhouse singer. She's probably one of the most immediately identifiable voices in rock, where you can just go, yeah, that's Hayley.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely.
What about yourself then?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I was sort of struggling because I mean, there's been a lot of albums that have come out this year, so like obviously, you know, like things like Tesseract and I mean, like Lynn says, you know, all of us are now sort of scoping a lot of genres in terms of what we're listening to. I think for me, it would have to be In the End It Always Does by Japanese House, because it's just like I first heard like the Japanese House like 6 years ago, or like maybe longer, like and I just felt like I hadn't heard anything like it. And again, it's similar to what we were saying about Hayley Williams and Paramore. It seems like she has like a really, really like distinct sound, and yet, you know, the instrumentation she uses and the way she like goes about recording and stuff like just can change, and yet she's still got that like core, you know, really unique way of writing and doing stuff, and I just absolutely love it. So that album came out earlier this year, and I was just like completely blown away by it. I just thought it was amazing.
Yeah. So that Japanese house record, it's the first time I'd come across them, and I saw someone talking about it as like kind of like a sort of dream pop adjacent sort of record, and I went, I like that sort of sound. So I checked it out, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
and probably haven't gone back to as much as I should, but like it's great.
Yeah, I think like I love like obviously like it's such a kind of like modern sound, really like you say, really like dream poppy or whatever, and lots of like synths in there. But like she also takes so much inspiration from a lot of older artists, which we do as well. So I really like respect that, and like once you find out about that, you can hear it in the music. Like she always said, like she grew up on like the Beach Boys, so like her harmonies that she's doing like with the vocoder and with multi-tracking, she's written in the same way that like Brian Wilson would have written stuff on like Pet Sounds and that sort of thing. So I really, really respect it. I just think it's really, really cool.
Yeah. So I love it when you can hear those callbacks to influences, and like, even if it's not a direct thing, like, oh, I wrote a riff that sounds like this, or I wrote a vocal melody that sounds like this. It's, I used the same recording kind of process.
Yeah, totally. And you can start off like wanting to write something that sounds like someone, and then it ends up completely different. And if you said, oh yeah, it would start it off like this, like people would go, what? Because they can't hear it at all, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like really interesting, like the way that she works, and it reminds me a lot of ourselves. So yeah, I love that album. It's just great.
Amazing.
I mean, we kind of, I think we get or have had a couple of raised eyebrows when we have cited Mastodon as an influence on us, because it's like, well, what are you talking about? Like, but it's and it's what I think like all three of us, to a degree, we are into sort of like relatively historical music. So like we like the fact that like stuff like that is buried quite deep, but we know it's there. So when we're hearing that in other people's music, you can kind of decide for yourself almost. You can decide if you hear the Beach Boys, if you hear it. It's very much your experience of it. Yeah. So, you know, if you don't hear Mastodon in what we do, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. You might hear something else that we didn't intend even. But I don't know. Well, I really like just sort of drawing my own conclusions on where people have come from, because it makes me feel connected with them if I feel like I can find a parallel, you know?
Yeah, if you're coming from a similar place influentially. And I really like that we've gone through this segue of Paramore to Tesseract to Japanese Dream House to Mastodon.
Yeah, listen, that's our band. It's
exactly. That's the list of our influences.
Right.
It's a pretty, like you say, I haven't necessarily heard a lot of Mastodon, But I think it's like we said, it's not just in the way that they, it's not just the way that they sound, it's the way that they maybe construct things.
Absolutely.
Because they've got quite a unique, way of doing things with the three vocalists, with, and like drums, like the fills are always such a huge part of their identity. So there's always a different way you can approach being influenced by someone.
Totally. And you could be influenced by, you can have two bands that are both influenced by a band like Mastodon, and they're influenced by completely different things. Like you could have a really heavy thing, like you say, picking up on the drum fills and stuff, and like, the guitar work, like low guitars and stuff. And then you have another band where it's like Mastodon, we always felt were quite sort of melody driven. And that was really important to us. So again, you can end up with like two completely different genres of bands, both taking influence from the same thing. And I think it's what makes music great. So, it's so cool.
It's like when I get sent something saying it says like for fans of Mastodon, Cult of Luna, I'm like, okay, so you're talking early Mastodon.
Yeah.
Because that's such a different band than when I get something that's like, oh, for fans of Mastodon, Tesseract, and I'm like, okay, so you're talking the prog band that they became, that was kind of lurking under the surface,
Absolutely.
What I wanted to talk about next, though, was obviously there's like some incredible bands out there that everybody knows, like Mastodon, like Paramore, but there's always that there's always stuff that people haven't heard of. And what I'd like to challenge you next on is, who's the band that you think going into 2024 deserves more love than they're getting, or perhaps you reckon are poised for like that next big leap up, or like should hopefully get a bit more of a break next year?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a band that we've seen, I think a couple of times now. Then they are getting a really good amount of attention, and it's really, really deserved. But I think they're now ready to be like getting up to that next level. And I'd say Unprocessed, like we saw them at Radar, and they're just like amazing. Like they're just so cool. Like I love like for like obviously we don't have guitars within our band, but watching them play, I mean all of them are amazing at their instruments. Like the bassist and drummer, of course, like we can take inspiration from that, but even like the way they all the guitarists play, and again the melodies that they write are just brilliant. So I mean all of us like have seen them perform and just been like, whoa, man, they're just great, just so good, know exactly what they're doing, really great songwriting. So I think they really are ready for that sort of next step, because plenty of people, like at Radar when they performed, a lot of people that I talked to didn't know them, and you could see the crowd, like everyone was just absolutely like vibing to it and just thought it was amazing. So yeah, they're great, they're really cool.
Those are some of my favorite excuse me. Those are some of my favorite discoveries, is when you stand at a stage and you're like, I've no idea who this is, but there's nothing on that I like want to see, so I'm just going to check it out, and you leave going, I loved that. I loved every second of that.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt the same way the first time I watched Loathe. I'd been a fan for a little while, but hadn't got a chance to get down to a show. Oh my gosh, it's just like absolutely unbridled power in their set. It was amazing. I loved it. I think though, however, because Loathe fans will know that like Loathe are doing okay, so people know who Loathe are. But my choice would be Nightlife. So the way that they describe themselves is so perfect, calling it soul punk. That's so perfect. I could never. It's perfect. Get straight to the point. But yeah, for a band like ourselves that don't incorporate guitars, we are really into obviously being fans of rock music on a very broad general level, but even sort of getting further into a band like what we are, where we dip our toe into progressive waters. We're obviously quite familiar with guitar based bands and draw a lot of our influence from them, and Nightlife are a guitar based rock band, but there's so much more to it than that. So get on to Nightlife, everyone.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Also, Breakance did a great album put out last year, like glitch pop sort of meets Midwest emo vibes. It's really something, and I think there's a new sound there, a really significant sort of breakthrough happening with Breakance. So yeah, that's what I would say. Sorry, I took two
that's all good.
two
I
bites
like
at the
that.
cherry.
Give one back.
It's really cool because obviously Nightlife, one of their main members is doing quite well as a producer as well, aren't they?
That's
I
right.
think I might be completely mistaken here, but I'm sure they've produced some of Pink Shift's stuff at some point.
Ooh,
Who
okay.
are another band? I could be wrong, but like they're another band that sort of emerged from, in the last couple of years, and I think they're absolutely stellar as well. Sort of started in that kind of post-hardcore-y, then moved quite rock.
Mm-hmm.
Now, last but not least, obviously we talked about everyone else's bands. Let's talk about yours. Let's talk about exploring Birdsong. So this year you've put out an EP and you've done a cover. So the EP you've done Dancing in the Face of Danger, and then you've just covered, which I thought was really interesting and a really nice take on it. You've just covered Diamond Eyes.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that a bit. Why did you choose to cover it, other than like you're probably Deftones fans?
Yes, yeah, guilty. Like everyone else, we also like Deftones. Not the edgiest band to be a fan. Well, but it's not. We're just like all the other girls, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we are huge Deftones fans. But Diamond Eyes has always stood out, I think, in it's kind of, it bonded the three of us, actually. We all sort of mutually have said, like, the chorus on Diamond Eyes is such a blinder. I can't believe it. It's amazing. And it moves to that chorus so beautifully. I don't know, all three of us, I think, have just felt really compelled by that song. So when we got the opportunity to do it, obviously with the EP coming out, we kind of let out a lot of energy in that release, and there was a lot of build up, and we had to release a lot of tension in a way in the lead up to that, and we got the chance to do that and took a few months, a much needed break. I'm a bit hesitant to say that because it kind of suggests that I'm talking about it in a negative way, and I don't mean that at all. But when you release music, and in the whole process of leading up to the release, it takes so much, and there's so much to get your teeth into and occupy your brain with, that it's just nice at the back of a release to just breathe and just have a moment to let the record have its day in the sun, and let people talk about it, and let people, it's theirs, it belongs to them. So we were really happy that the day finally came, because it was one of those, it was brewing all throughout lockdown. And then we finally were able to get into the studio and do it. So yeah, after that was released, we said, like, well, what can we do? What can we do that's something in the lead up to our next lot of original music that we're planning on putting out? And Diamond Eyes just seemed to work. It's really melodic, and it really, even though we have sort of spun it to fit our niche, it didn't actually take that much work to do it. It's a really harmonically satisfying song. So it really didn't take a lot of work to sort of put our spin onto it. But yeah, we're huge Deftones fans. So and we've had a really warm and friendly reception to it, so that's been nice.
Yeah, like I say, I really enjoyed it. And last but not least, you've sort of kind of hinted at it there. So what's next? Obviously, like you say, you've kind of done this EP, kind of this big release. You've done this cover, and you hinted that there is some new music on the way.
Yeah, I think Well, like Lynn said, like the process of the last EP. I mean, we love it so much, and it really felt like we took a major step in sort of working out, our sound and what we wanted to do, the kind of music we wanted to make, this sort of thing. So finally getting that out, and that was the whole process of that. We had some of those songs in like 2018 or like earlier, and getting them to the right place with the demos and working out when we were going to go in the studio, and then COVID being in the middle of all that was just like, whoa, like completely like draining in some ways, even though obviously that sounds negative, but we put so much energy into it. So then obviously, again, like Lynn said, Diamond Eyes being the a song that we all love, and releasing that felt like a kind of nice sort of refresher. And we sort of said between our first and second EP we didn't release anything, and we feel like we don't want that to be the case anymore, because we have people who like us, and that's crazy to us. So we want to be like good to them, and thank them for being like looking out for us and sharing us and all this sort of thing. So we sort of said we want to be continuing to like put stuff out, and yeah, we can't say loads at the moment, but we can say that expect more in the not too distant future. 2020 should be fun. And again, we just we really wanted to be able to do something where we can be putting stuff out, but it's not after years of silence, like it was.
No,
before.
absolutely. Yeah.
So basically, watch this space, I think, is what we can say.
Amazing. Well, thank you ever so much for your time today.
Thank you for having us. We've had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We could talk about this for a long time.
Thank you ever so much for joining me. This evening I'm joined by Katie from the incredible Pupil Slicer, who've just completed a tour with Employed to Serve as main support. Katie, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Just recovering from that tour still, but yeah, very busy. I got really sick at the end of it, so that wasn't fun. Just getting better now.
Oh, good. Yeah, there's definitely something going around, and you mentioned before that a few of you got quite ill on that tour, so
yeah.
Well, what we're doing, as I mentioned, is with it being the end of the year and everyone doing their albums of the year lists, we're no different. We did this last year, really enjoyed doing it. It went down really well. So we thought, let's bring it back for 2023. We've been chatting to a few different people, obviously including yourself, about your favorite album of the year. So without further ado, what is your favorite album from 2023?
I don't know. There's loads of them. I got a couple choices. Like, it's hard because I was looking back through this year, and I was like, it's actually a really good year.
Yeah.
But also this year's been incredibly busy for us. Like, we did 4 weeks with Boris, we did loads of summer festivals, we did the ETS tour, plus all the rehearsals for all of those. There's not actually been much time to listen to it, so I feel like I'm barely
Yeah, you've had a lot of time.
Like to the bumper of the back of the speeding vehicle of great albums, trying to like cop an ear on them when I can. But yeah, there's definitely been a lot of stuff. So like, I made a little list of like contenders, and then there's like, I can probably narrow it down to one if you want. Yeah.
Let's have a look then. So let's have a chat about one or two of your contenders, or even just one of your contenders.
Really been, I guess, like the things I've been listening to probably the most this year are Dane's Shapeless and Bajalvin's Bajibal. Both funny names. Yeah, they're both like electronic projects. I'd probably go, hard to pick between them because I've been listening to both of them a lot. Should have been more prepared for this. I was told it was an album in advance, and I was like, I don't know how to pick. I don't do lists like this, so it's always hard. I'm the type to do a like here in no particular order is like a top 5 of things.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
But yeah, Dane's like a solo electronic project from Melbourne. and they just announced a tour with Bring Me the Horizon over there, which is really cool. And it's sort of like Charlie XCX, but like heavier and really cool electronic. I think some of the tracks were produced by Dylan Brady from Gex as well.
Okay.
Just a really cool. It's like an EP that they released in like February, and that's really cool. Just tunes. Because you know you're touring and you hear so much like
Yeah, you kind of want to
every
listen to
night.
something
You
else.
sort of
Yeah.
like, yeah, I've got something else after all that.
So yeah, it's
Um,
genuinely, it's not one I'm familiar with, but then again, it's
Yeah.
it doesn't
I
need to
think it
be.
sounds up your alley because like
Yeah, I mean, you say
you're
Charlie
Rena and
XCX,
you're
and I'm like,
Charlie and you're meeting Rena in the Slicer shirt.
still a highlight. That was great. Yeah, no, I'll definitely
Yeah.
have to check it out because that does sound like something that I could probably enjoy, and that's huge if they're
Yeah.
touring with Bring Me.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. And then Bajalv Bajibal is like a weird cyber grind, bro step fusion.
Okay.
It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like Skrillex with like See You Next Tuesday, or like I don't know, just like really intense grindcore run through it. It's really cool. Really cool project. I've listened to
Yeah.
a lot this year. It's got a fun name to say as well.
Yeah, that does sound really interesting, actually.
To run through some of my other contenders from this year, if I'm allowed.
Yeah, go on. Let's have another pick.
There was the Jesus Peace album. That was really cool.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So unknown. Got riffs for days. I missed them recently when they were in London, but yeah,
Well, they're back.
that was
They're
really
back soon,
cool.
aren't they?
They are back soon. Yeah, might go and have to go and catch that one.
Yeah.
The Skrillex double album was really good as well at the start of the year.
Oh, I forgot Skrillex put a record out this year.
Yeah, it's
Damn.
like his first one in like a decade or something, and it was a double album.
So it's been a while. Yeah, clearly been spending
Yeah.
his time on it at least.
That was really cool. The Santa Fe Access album was really cool.
Oh yeah, there
Liturgy,
was a
Danny
thing.
Brown, Graphic Nature, Boris in Uniform.
That Boris in Uniform was good.
Yeah, that's good. The new 100 Gex was cool. The Code Orange was like, I love Code Orange, and that was a really weird one. I need to listen to it more. So like first listen, I was like, I don't get what they're going for. And then a couple listens more, I was like, oh, I get it now. And then I feel like if I get another couple listens, I'll be like, oh yeah, it's like the sickest Code Orange album ever. It's just like
Yeah.
a bit of a grower, that one, because it sort of takes you off.
So really, yeah,
as you go.
thing I really liked about that Code Orange record was that it felt like it felt like everything they'd done before, but they just smashed it up completely and then rearranged it in something they hadn't done. So it was really fun to listen to and be like, you've sounded like this, but never in this like way or never in this kind of structure.
Yeah, never in this order of these sounds.
Yeah, so
all the sounds are familiar for Code Orange, but like it's a totally new like configuration of them.
Yeah, really cool record.
Yeah, I thought it was sick seeing. Did you see Danny Brown interviewing Jamie and be like Danny Brown's favorite song on the Code Orange album was a drone, which is like the weirdest, most fucked up one. And Danny Brown was like, I love it. It just sounds like nonsense. How do you make those noises?
Oh, I didn't see that. I'll have to check that out.
I haven't
That sounds
listened
like a really
to
good
the new
one.
Danny Brown album came out, like because he did the collab with JPEG Mafia this year, and then his new solo album came out like 3 days ago. I haven't listened to it yet. I was going to listen to it today at some point, but
yeah, I remember that's just come out. I need to check that one out, that Danny Brown one as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, moving on from what's come out this year, one thing I always obviously like love doing is talking about bands that either you feel are criminally overlooked at the moment, or are kind of maybe going to have, or you reckon are going to have like a really big year next year. So again, doesn't have to be one. Can take a couple if you prefer. But what would be your pick for? I mean, either of those, a band you think is overlooked, or a band you reckon is going to have a massive 2024.
I mean, it's not hard to say that I think Heriot is going to have a massive 2024. They're on like everyone's up and coming list, like number one.
Oh god, yeah.
which is really cool. I'm really happy for them. For like a band that's overlooked, I think Death Goals is a band we're friends with, and we've been friends with since the very first show we ever played.
Yeah, I absolutely love those guys.
Yeah, they're fantastic, and I feel like, you know, they should have as many people listen to them as people listen to us. Not that the golf is like arena bands, like club band. It's like it's quite similar, but like I do feel like I don't see why more people aren't listening to them, because they are really cool, and they're such fantastic live bands. They're like one of my favorite live bands, and like I've seen them live like probably like in like the 20s, 30s amount of
Nice.
times, just because we've played with them so many times and like gone to each other's gigs so many times. When we were playing that London show on the ETS tour, there was like a part where I like looked out into the crowd all dramatically, and I just saw Harry from Death Girls off to the side. I gave him a little wave, and I was like, "Oh, sick!" Got the
Yeah.
besties out supporting, which is really cool. And then he
Yeah.
had to leave before we got to chat to him later. But yeah, they're a really cool band, and we're getting to play with them at our headline show in January. It was going to be our first ever London headline show. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, honestly, that surprised me. That it's the first one, but I'm really looking forward to that. The reality unfolds, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And the
That should be
lineup
really
for
cool.
that is just
Yeah,
wild.
there's a lot of bands that are all very cool.
Yeah,
So hopefully it will be a good show.
yeah.
I
did
don't
actually.
know how long our set will be, but it'll be cool to play longer,
Yeah,
because on sports you don't really get. Luckily on the Boris tour we were given like a 45-minute slot because it was just us and Boris.
yeah. That's really good when it's like such a small bill.
Yeah, because we got to play quite a lot, which is really nice. But yeah, on this, hopefully this will be able to be like a decent size set list as well, because it's the first London headliner. So
Yeah, I mean, shooting for what, an hour?
hopefully, yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah,
I don't think we've done. I think we've done 50 minutes. That's the longest we've done, but we can definitely do more,
yeah,
especially with 2 albums now. It was sort of hard to push that 50 minutes when we had 1 album out. It was like just play the whole album and
yeah,
that's sort of it. But now it's like, well, now we're struggling to fit things in a 45-minute set.
yeah. That's a good feeling, you know.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we've got. I mean, I just saw Death Goals actually on the Filth is Eternal tour.
Oh, sick. Yeah, I saw those come around.
Yeah,
And I
that
like
was.
listen. I didn't know the band, and I like listened to them. I was like, oh, this is really cool. I wish I went.
Yeah, they're really sick, and it was just a great show. Like Death Goals, I mean, they killed it. They always do, you know.
They always do.
So yeah, absolutely them, and I mean, you know, I love Heriot. So like,
Yeah.
those
Heriot,
two
number
bands.
one mega fan, Will Marshall.
I don't know if it's number one, but yeah, I've seen him a few times.
It's up there. It's up there. You're at least top 5, I feel.
We'll see. But yeah, the last thing I wanted to ask about is obviously we kind of touched on it already. Is 2024 for Pupil Slicer? Obviously, the first thing is like the main thing, I suppose, is your first ever London headliner for Reality Unfolds at New Cross Inn in January, which is
12th
mega.
of January, pretty early. Kicking the year off pretty hard. Yeah, and then we're hoping to do like a headline tour at some point next year. Figuring in where that's like gonna fit, because it's like working around work schedules and things like that. We've already had some like pretty sick tour offers come in that unfortunately like haven't lined up right with work. But hopefully we'll get some more of those later in the year. So we're sort of hoping for like sort of nice UK headline run, then maybe a UK EU support tour, couple of festivals. But we're gonna sort of keep the summer sort of free to like do a bit of writing. We've been working a bit on new stuff, which is really cool. And then but it's good. We are really proud of Blossom, so we want to like do a Blossom tour and like be playing the whole album in full if possible. But some of those songs are really hard.
If you'll forgive the pun, it
we
does
could work
deserve its
up to it.
flowers.
It does. It does. Yeah, that's my album of the year. It kind of was. It's the album I listened to the most. So I'm like, I do really like the album I made, which is good because I didn't feel like that with Mirrors. By the time it came out, I was so tired of it. I had to stop myself listening to Blossom so that when it came out, I was still excited to talk about it in interviews and stuff. I haven't like rinsed it that hard, so I'm still sort of in a phase of being like, yeah, that was sick. Because what's the point in making music if you don't like it yourself?
No, exactly. You know, you don't want to make something that you're like, it's fine. You know.
Yeah, and you want to be excited to play the songs every time. Like you want to be starting. For me, like hearing that intro to No Temple live through the in-ears and then like dropping into it, or like shouting No Temple going into their breakdown, or like the intro to Momentary, or like that first bit at the start of Blossom where you're just playing the chords on their own, like gets me pumped as much as I want it to get the audience pumped. And I think that's really good because it sort of carries the energy across into the
For
crowd.
sure.
It's been really cool seeing like on the ETS tour there was like a couple gigs where someone just like knew the words to every song, and I was like, why? How do you know the words to every song? But me and I was chatting to Justine about it, and Justine was like, the best thing to do with something like that is you stare at them doing the vocals for as long as you can until they mess something up. Just like challenge them. You're like, oh, you think you're good, do you? Like, let's
You
see.
remember every single word that we wrote, do you?
Yeah.
Bit of fun. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, well, honestly, that is absolutely everything. So thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.